Today on Locked On Rockies, the Colorado Rockies over their last 20 games have played over 500 ball. Is this sustainable? Can they get back to 500? Do they have the depth to do it?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 12th day of May in the year 2023. I am your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every single day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, guess what? You are in the right spot, because that's what we do around here. We talk about the Colorado Rockies each and every day here on the Locked On Rockies podcast. You can be part of the show by subscribing to the Locked On Rockies podcast on YouTube and be part of the live chat. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Folks, today on the Locked On Rockies podcast, we are going to talk about the Rockies' path back to 500 and a couple of points I noticed from Renee Dechert's that'd be funny. Rockies pitch newsletter that I thought was good. And I think there's two key points in particular that I want to highlight from that. Of course, we'll look ahead to tonight's matchup with the Phils as well. But if you're wondering, who the heck is this guy? Why am I listening to him talk about the Colorado Rockies? I am Paul Holden, your Rockies fan extraordinaire. Been following this team my entire life, 3 seasons now, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. The Rockies are playing good baseball. It's been a lot of fun. It's a solid stretch for this team. Over their last 20 games, the Colorado Rockies are 11-9, if I did my math correctly. I believe I did. So, not above 500 by a ton, but they're not only are they playing good ball, but they've put it together. They're consistently playing good baseball. And we got some stats here from Joel Milholm, Purple Row. Rockies 8-2 run fueled by phenomenal stats. So this is only 10 of the games as opposed to the full sample size of the 20. But I want to go circle back to the 20, why I pulled last 20 games here. But in a season filled with bad news, the Rockies fans have to enjoy this ride. It started on April 30th against Arizona when the Rockies won 12-4. Austin Gomber was on the mound and threw 6 solid innings, only giving up 1 run. In his 6th start, he earned his 2nd win of the season after taking losses in each of his 4 starts when he had a 12-12 ERA. He's now won 3 straight starts to almost cut that ERA in half to 6.75. Sure, the Rockies' terrific play has only come during a short period of 10 games, but during that stretch, the team learned that they also lost German Marquez for the rest of the season and beyond, and the Rockies got Antonio Senzatella back from a torn ACL in August, but now we're all on pins and needles waiting for the test results on a tight right forearm. That resulted in him being pulled after 2 2/3 innings. So are the Rockies just lucky? No, there's some numbers here. The Rockies have outscored their opponents 63-28 over this 10-game stretch, including going 4-2 on the road. The Rockies outscored the Pirates and the Mets 32-15 on the road. Before the streak, which Joel is calling BS, fittingly from here on out, the Rockies were outscored 163-103 while losing 20 of 28 games. And leading the way has been sensational pitching. In April and March, the team's ERA was 5.40, with 6.04 for starters and 4.64 for relievers. In May, Rocky starters have a 3.65 ERA, while the bullpen has a lights-out 1.56. Opposing teams hit 270 in the BS times compared to 228 in May. Collectively, Rockies pitchers are averaging 8.4 strikeouts per game during the 8-2 streak, which improved from 7.3. BS, so before the streak. I like that it's called BS because it's before the streak, but I was thinking it was the BS times. I thought it was funny, but it's a massive improvement. It's massive upside. It's a massive moment for the Colorado Rockies season this year because they're showing their abilities to bounce back, and especially by doing it on the road. Now, why I wanted to focus on 20 games as opposed to 10 games is because that tells a bigger picture and a bigger sample size of the overall season. However, when you look at those 20 games and when you look at when the Rockies are winning, especially when it comes to that winning streak, it all starts the Rockies since let me get back to my here we go. The Rockies since the April 29th have not lost back-to-back games. The Rockies have, since losing 3 in a row to Cleveland and 2 to Arizona, the Rockies have not lost back-to-back games. The Rockies they won 4 in a row before losing to New York, and they won the back-to-back games against New York before dropping the opener to Pittsburgh. So that's a good sign, especially when you look. I mean, this was that long stretch from April 12th to the 19th. That was, it was spelling pretty much doomsday. I mean, from April 11th to April 23rd, the Rockies only won once. And they're playing a similar level of talent. I mean, they're the only team that's really different out of this stretch. Well, I guess there's a few teams. I shouldn't say that. That's not good analysis there. But I'd say they're playing similar caliber teams here over this stretch, if not maybe better when you look at some of the teams, especially the way the Rockies opened the season. I mean, this is good news. This does show that the Rockies are making adjustments and getting better. But my question now for the Rockies and their quest back to 500, because when I look at the next 4 series for the Rockies, I can see them playing 500 ball over these 4 series. It's going to be tough because you got Philly and Cincinnati coming to Coors Field, which hopefully you could argue that the Rockies should be able, if the Rockies can get out and win this first game tonight, Rockies should be in a good position to be able to win 1 of 2 against Philly. And then Cincinnati ain't great. Cincinnati definitely has potential and definitely is a better team than they have been in the past, but Cincinnati ain't great. You should be able to handle Cincinnati, and if that's the case, that gives you 5 straight series wins. If the Rockies pull off the series wins in those 2 series, that's 5 straight series wins. That's a elongated, good stretch of baseball, both on the road and at home, showing incredible promise, especially during a time when their starting pitching has been dealing with injuries and suspect at times. Things are getting better for the Rockies, and they are continuing on the better path. I just wonder how sustainable that is and what's going to happen when the Rockies do run into the stretch of powerhouse teams, especially in the NL West. Because they have 2 series that it's going to be a tough stretch for the Rockies after this homestand, I think. Going on the road to Texas, a good Texas team, for sure, and seeing a good, it looks like they're avoiding the top of the rotation in Texas, but still going to see John Gray there in that series. So then going up against Miami, it is at home, which is good. The Rockies are much better against Miami at home, but still, Miami always plays the Rockies well. And then you got that New York looking for a revenge series in Arizona. So the month of May is still full of challenging teams. There's a couple of opportunities for the Rockies to get in there, but these are all teams that might be below 500 at this point, but certainly have the capability to go above 500 at some point in the season. If the Rockies are able to win these first 2 series, I think it does paint a pretty good hope for this team to get back to 500. But it's going to be really difficult to do so. And I think the depth is going to become an issue by the end of the month. I think as even we're seeing good stuff happen right now with the Rockies, if we see a little bit of shakiness in the middle, there's just so much what if still with this team, especially with the starting pitching. And as we are going to look at here coming up in a little bit, still some questions about how you manage and handle some of your position players and what you want to do there. So the Rockies, if they continue at the rate that they're playing, certainly can get back to 500. I just worry that the depth is going to come up and it's going to be a factor here sooner rather than later. But if at the end of the month, they even if they go 500 on the month, because I don't think if they go 500 throughout all the month, I don't think that gets them back up to 500. They're going to obviously need to play a little more winning baseball being below 500. But you can't sit here and look at the month of May and look at the teams that they play in May. And if they finish at 500, that's still a good stretch of baseball. It's a great stretch of baseball if they can continue their hot streak, especially during this homestand. If they dominate this homestand, the path gets a little bit easier, but I still have my doubts. I do still have my doubts. I think the Rockies have shown us that they are capable of more than the beginning of the year, that they are more than how they started the series, the season. But how much more can they go? How high can they go, given the injuries and the depth issues? I'm not certain. But 500 is at the end of May is a possibility. If we're only looking for the short-term goals right now, if we're focused in short-term just on the month, not focusing on going too far on the season as a whole, can the Rockies get back to 500 in the month of May? Yes. It'll be very difficult to do so, though, because they have some teams that are certainly looking to get hot and ready to go. But let's dive into a couple of other points and potential hurdles and questions for the Rockies here coming up in segment number 2. Also, look ahead to tonight's matchup. We'll just look at who's on the bump and things to point out for tonight's matchup with the Phillies here tonight as well, coming up on the in segment number 3. Before we move on, though, got to tell you about our friends at Sorare. And folks, you like to collect cards, right? Or maybe you're curious about the world of getting into like the card games. You see people getting really into the world of cards, and maybe you're a little hesitant about the cost and things taking up space. Sorare is really cool because it combines fantasy baseball and cards into one ultimate perfect mashup of fantasy baseball fun. And you've seen the commercials. They've partnered with some of the best in the business to show you that this is the real deal. It's unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, Sorare managers truly own their fantasy experience. Collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards. And here's the point. There's no cost to play. Even though it's saying buy and selling, that's just the in-game market. You can get in and start playing on Sorare for free right now, and you can start competing for awesome prizes like Sorare scarcity cards, game tickets, merchandise, signed jerseys, and VIP experience like meeting MLB stars, including Julio Rodriguez and more. That's Sorare.com, Sorare.com/lockedon to draft your team of free player cards. Set your lineup and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's Sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. Sorare.com/lockedon. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and we're proud to be your first listen of the day. Shout-outs to all my everyday listeners like Furious MMO, Lux Ace, 13X, AM13. They're hanging out in the Locked On Rockies live chat, just like you could be when you subscribe to the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel here, and you'll know when we go live. Furious MMO says, I think they can when they look at the question of can the Rockies get back to 500. If they continue to play like they are, a slump is always ahead, but they have to find a way out of it fast. They can't be winning games like these and then continue to lose like 8 in a row. Lux Ace says it's possible, but it's going to be hard. It depends on what teams we play at what time. Like, for example, we played the Pirates when they were red hot and got swept, and we faced the Mets when they were really cold and got swept by the Tigers, and they got us when we were good. Great points. It's baseball. It's very streaky, and that's exactly the point. The big thing, you know a team is good. You know a team has made it, and you're confident in your team when they're able to break up the big streak. Why we were so down on the Rockies for so long to start the season was the Rockies were not bouncing back. They were losing games. They were kicking the ball around. They weren't coming up clutch. That was what we preached over the Rockies' tough start. What are the Rockies are now fighting back, winning ball games, and again, 3-game losing streak, but that was predicated by 2 wins, as opposed to the stretch like we talked about from April 11th to April 23rd, where the Rockies won 1 game in a series of in 4 series, basically 2 series actually. If you go back 1 more game to the St. Louis, so two of those 2 wins in 4 series. You have to break that up. You have to avoid the big long stretch, especially if you're looking to be competitive. Yes, you can adjust and make progress up now, but an 8-game losing streak in the prime of the season is what sinks a season. That's what separates the good teams from the bad. The good teams are able to avoid those moments and break up those stretches. Slumps do happen, sure, and bad stretches do happen, but you need to go 4-6 over 10 games, not 2-8, 1-9, 0-10. Those type of stretches will sink your season. So if the Rockies can avoid that and do so, they do have the path back to 500, but it's going to be, like we talked about in segment number 1, it's going to be tough. Luxe says, you know what the Rockies do? They do good and get you excited, then fall off a cliff and go last in the division. Yes, you always have to take everything with a grain of salt there for the Rockies and excitement, absolutely. And that's why it's good why I wanted to take the 10-game really exciting sample size of the great baseball the Rockies have played and expand it out to the 20 games, because the 20 games gives us a bigger look at the season overall, but it shows that the Rockies have gotten better. The first 10 were significantly worse than the last 10. So now if you're looking, hopefully the Rockies are going to continue the trend of good solid sets of 10-game stretches, because even though they're small sample sizes, 10 games, it gives you a good snapshot of where a team is at currently in a season and currently in that moment. So I think 10-game stretches are good things to look at for evaluation, especially when you want to go, there's a reason why some people do 15, some people do 7. If you look at MLB.com, they do it last 7, last 15, and then last 30 games for how they compile some stats. So I don't know. That's just kind of how I look at things, and when I look at how I feel about where the Rockies are at and how they're playing. So the times are good right now, and it's honestly been fun. I mean, this has been fun. Even in the losses the Rockies have had in this time, I mean, it's been close baseball, and it's just been good to see this team outscoring team. I mean, man, that's just what I've loved to hear. The Rockies just not only outscoring their opponents, but by a lot, and doing so on the road. 13XAM13 says, you think the Rocks will win a World Series in like 4 to 5 years? No, I don't. It all has to, the Rockies, everything has to come together perfectly for the Rockies for it to happen in the next 4 to 5 years. I'd say the window probably starts to open completely to being as confident as we were in the Rockies in 4 to 5 years if all of the prospects pan out, or, with everyone, depending on what the Rockies do. And we're actually, that's a good lead into our next topic. If these prospects and if these players pan out to be a little bit better and a little bit more than what we thought we were getting, then the Rockies could certainly have a chance to be in the playoff window at least. I don't necessarily think a World Series is there, but again, it's make it to the dance and see what happens, because as Renee Dechert writes in her Rockies Pitch newsletter here, the CJ Cron reckoning is coming. And this is an interesting point here, because this is from, like I said, y'all need to subscribe to the Rockies Pitch. It's really great. It's a really great way to get great tidbits of information that break down and point out where the where the Rockies are at. But here, CJ Cron hasn't been good since the All-Star game. This is, again, Renee Dechert, last July. Right now, he has a WRC plus of 81, which just isn't going to cut it, especially not with Montero and Tolia waiting in Albuquerque. I suspect the Rockies had hoped to trade Cron, but surely the interest is low. I would expect them to DFA him after the All-Star break unless his game improves, which is surprising. The trade market has to be low for CJ Cron, but I still think someone out there will give you something for CJ Cron, and it's worth trying to explore. Now, again, it might be completely cooled off. There might be no other option, but there is a moment the Rockies are going to have to pivot, because here is great news from Albuquerque here from Renee as well. Eleris Montero, Nolan Jones, Coco Montez, and Michael Toglia are hitting the cover off the ball. Patrick Saunders reported earlier this week that the Rockies are pleased with Jones's progress, but they want him to become more comfortable in the outfield before bringing him to Denver. Whatever happens with the Rockies, getting to see the youngsters play at Coors Field this year is going to be fun. If Montero, Jones, Coco Montez, Michael Toglia, all these names are ripping the cover off the ball, they need to come up. And guess who's in the way of two of them? At least it's CJ Cron. CJ Cron has to start stepping up. He needs to come up clutch, or else he needs to go help another team do what they need to do. Another team is certainly looking for a CJ Cron, or will be looking for a CJ Cron in around the trade deadline, possibly. This is there's something that you have to do with CJ Cron, because you cannot allow Toglia and Montero and and Nolan Jones is going. The outfield is the focus for him, so it's not the same. But again, you got to let these kids play at some point. I know Montero's defense wasn't great, but if he can bring some power and he can bring some thump, especially because that's what CJ Cron's supposed to do, Montero can learn first base. You have Toglia as well. If Toglia is swinging the bat and hitting the ball well, you got to be willing to make that move. And I don't know. The lack of action. It's full circle, right? Everything you can kind of look at with the Rockies, it goes full circle to things that they could have done, should have done. And this season is a really interesting look at how the Rockies have set themselves up, because it still feels like classic Rockies, facing all these injuries, a lot of issues with the starting pitching depth. They had this terrible stretch, but now they're playing better baseball and making you kind of scratch your head and wonder like who this team actually is, how much does this team actually have in the tank as they deal with these injuries. And so you got to make, like we talked about yesterday, you're going to have to make some moves. You're going to have to clear up some space. You're going to have to figure things out. Or you're going to have to trade some of these guys, the young guys too, to get you some starting pitching. The Rockies are going to have to do something. I don't want to read everything from it, because, again, I really suggest you go read and find the Rockies Pitch newsletter there. It's awesome. Renee's the Rockies. It's awesome. It's really a great way for me to get some my info during the week here. But I just wanted to point out one more thing here for the Rockies' success over this last stretch here. The bullpen, best in baseball, one of the best in baseball right now. Rockies bullpen is worth 2.1 FWR, the fifth highest in baseball. Yes, you read that correctly. Renee reminds us. Moreover, the Rockies have three relievers in the top 25. Brent Suter, 17 with a 1.17 ERA. Jake Bird, 18 with a 2.88. And Brad Hand, 21 with a 3.14. So far, the Rockies' offseason moves in this area have paid off. Low risk, smart moves, not a ton of commitment, not a lot of money to the bullpen. It's paid off for now. Others haven't so much, but we talked about it all in the offseason, that the Rockies did bolster this bullpen, and it could be good, solid, fine. And now they're exceeding expectations at the moment. So I just wanted to bring out a couple more of those Rockies storylines to you, but let's put a bow on my question of the podcast. Can the Rockies get back to 500? Yes, they can. I don't think they will, because the depth is going to get in the way. The summer is going to get a little longer. The stretches are going to get tougher. Teams are going to get on better streaks, and the Rockies are going to have to compete. I think this team can play 500 ball month to month, but I don't think they're going to ever go above and beyond to have a stretch to get them to 500 here in this season. But hey, maybe they prove me wrong. Let's see what the next step is for the Rockies to get to 500, and that is tonight's matchup with the Philadelphia Phillies, as Phillies are 18-19, Rockies 16-22. You can catch the action on Sirius XM. The first pitch is going to be at 6:40 Mountain Time. And you can also find all your Locked On Rockies action at Sirius XM. Also want to tell you folks about our friends at Gametime. Gametime is going to help you out when you need last-minute tickets. Do you have a date coming up? Did you have plans? Do you want to meet up with your buddies at the next concert that you forgot to buy tickets about when they told you about it way ahead of time and said, hey, don't be a bozo and forget it? Well, guess what? Gametime's got you covered. Not only do they have coverage with last-second tickets, they have deals, and you can find your seats with a little picture so you can know where you're sitting. And they got the lowest price guarantee. They got you covered for event cancellation protection, and you don't even have to plan months in advance when it comes to Game Time. They got the flash deals tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, all sorts of good stuff. And you can buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first payment. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. Thanking you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and streaming on your favorite streaming service, as well as the Sirius XM app. Check us out there. Shout outs to them. Go make Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, and our Locked On Nuggets podcast. Locked On Buffs too, but the Denver Nuggets. Just pure domination by the Nuggets. Really cool stuff. They're breaking it all down there at Locked On Nuggets, so you do not want to miss out on that. If you want to keep your Colorado sports fix alive tonight, you're going to be watching Rockies Phillies, I hope. They are going to be turning to, I believe Austin Gomber is getting the start tonight. Let me double check my roster here. Yep, Gomber on the bump tonight for the Rocks. Gomber really turned things around in these last 3 starts. Would love to see Gomber get through 6 innings cleanly if he can. The big issue, he gave up he's given up a couple earned runs in that last start, an earned run there in Arizona, but the offense has been able to back him up tremendously in the past couple of games. Would love to see him hit that 5 strikeout mark here for the first time this season. Almost got that in Arizona. If Gomber can get 5 Ks, that's going to be a good sign for the Rockies, especially at home. So his home ERA, though, currently sitting at 10.66. He's got 10 strikeouts so far at home, but if things have been looking up for Gomber here, 3 wins for the Rockies in his last 3 starts, and hopefully keeping the good times going. Let's see here for the opposing pitcher today. Taijuan Walker for the Phillies, 2-2, 6.75 away ERA, able to strike out 18 on the road so far. The Phillies have gone 2-1 over his last 2 starts. He only went 4 innings in one of those starts, but ramped things back up to 6 innings, 3 innings also, getting chased in a tough loss to the Dodgers there. So 2 out of his last 3 starts have not been great, and it looks like the team's been able to back him up. Only going 4 innings against the Mariners, 3 innings against the Dodgers, but against his last outing against the Red Sox, they're a good team, or at least a red-hot team right there. 6 innings pitched, 3 hits, only giving up 1 earned run on the home run and 6 strikeouts. Seems like Walker's a little home run prone here, giving up at least 1 home run in his last 4 starts. A couple of multi-home run games in those tough starts for him, as well as some walks. So good disciplined plate approach for the Rockies tonight, as well as the long ball. Should be a nice recipe for the Rockies to have some success at Coors Field tonight. First pitch, 6:40 tonight. Hope you all enjoy it, and you all enjoy your weekend, because that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for tuning in. Another great week of Rockies baseball in the books. We'll be breaking things all down on Monday. You can catch up with all the action on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Your subscription helps the show a lot. Big time shout out to all my everydayers out there, my everyday listeners, and those in the live chat today. You can find it all at the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. And until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.